Do you know what lick the pig is?
No.
No. So you see this here? This is a connector of my headphone jack. So my headphone plugs into that, and then that goes into my computer. So it's like an extension for my headphones.
Yeah.
Now, I sit here playing with it. I shouldn't play with it, but I do. I sit here twiddling it and pulling it and everything else, and I shouldn't because it's weakening the connection between these two things.
Right.
And if you twist it too much, it starts crackling in my ears,
right,
which is annoying. So what you're supposed to do is to increase the connectivity is you're supposed to do what's called lick the pig. Well, apparently it's a military term. You pull this out and you lick it and then you stick it back in the hole. And that increases connectivity. Now, I imagine it's probably very bad for it. It probably causes rust or something, but it does work. So I was just looking at it thinking I've got to lick my pig because it was getting all crackly. Anyway, where are we?
Wow, that's going to translate really well. So basically, it's a military term where you pull something out, you lick the end of it and stick it back in the hole.
Yeah, so someone on the radio will be going, 2424 Alpha Bravo, come in, check. And they'll go, oh, it's all really crackly. You need to lick your pig.
Oh.
Stand by. Hello, this is Alpha 2 Bravo. Come in. And it'll be perfect.
Hello, this is Alpha Bravo.
Hello.
Got the enemy on the other side going, I don't know what they're doing. This is a bit worrying. Boss. Look, listen. What's that noise? It sounds like new technology.
He's licked his pig, sir. We're done for.
Hello and welcome back. I'm James Skiffins.
And I am Malcolm Childs. And this is Just Making Conversation podcast.
From 3D prints to robo castings, we're going to just be making conversation.
Remember, there are other podcasts that you can listen to.
Plastic Model Mojo.
The Scale Model Podcast.
Plastic Posse Podcast.
On the Bench.
Model Geeks.
The Sprue Cutters Union.
Small Subjects.
Built Sideways.
Model by Carpoden.
The Micro Machines Podcast.
Am Show Podcast.
Modeling Insanity Podcast. Head to modelpodcasts.com for all of the links.
If you've enjoyed this episode, you can show your support in two ways. Leave a fantastic 5-star review on your favorite podcast app for free, or contribute financially. Visit paypal.me/podcastjmc for a one-time donation. If you're even more excitable, you could go for the monthly donation. Check out the patreon.com/justmakingconversation. It's as easy as cherry pie.
Ooh, yum. We're going to be just making conversation about the world of 3D printing with Mr. David Harris from 3D Gizmo, who clearly knows more about resin and STL files than us.
Just what is it all about? How easy is it to get a good print first time round? And are there any super tips for those wanting to start playing in the world of 3D model making?
David will be the best person to answer all those questions, and maybe he will be able to enlighten a new realm of 3D printers.
We've had some fan mail.
Yeah.
So this is all of this, in fact, was from the Facebook post in relation to Telford. Frank's jumped in there straight away with being the first person and said, just listen to it on my lorry on the M1 and my name mentioned. Happy days. Another fun pod. I'm glad I didn't need a number 2 at the show then.
Oh, this is in relation to the description of the toilets and the fun times you had at Telford, huh?
Unfortunately, I have been given or slapped actually with a notice from Armchairs and Shanks that I can't discuss this any further until the litigation has gone through. So I bear no responsibility for what was or wasn't said. I cannot confirm or deny if anything was said or wasn't said.
Well, as Frank Little's name's been mentioned again. If that makes him happy, why don't you chuck your name on the tail of the next episode by donating to our Patreon? Then we can read it out every single time. Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, there you go. See?
That's a plug for you. Justin Ryan, he was also in that particular post too. He says, fantastic episode, guys. Justin from the Insanity podcast here. James, he says, I'd like to think that the guy who was talking to you about the friend with the real bonsai tree that you have to water is me. I did this Machine Krieger suit with a soldier in the depths of post-traumatic stress disorder beneath an olive tree made up of a real bonsai in training. And he's shown a picture of the actual model.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
It could have been his mate.
Could have been.
Most likely was. I can't think of many other models there might be the real bonsai trees in them.
No, but I like the idea.
No, I'm thinking. Bonsai proof build.
Oh, genius! I didn't see that coming at all. I like that idea.
It's a good idea.
It is. Yeah, it would be another outlandish, just making conversation, daft idea that's just up my street.
Also, you like gardening, so a mixer too. Maybe your wife would get involved.
No. I don't like gardening. She likes gardening, and she likes me getting me in the garden.
Whoa. Hey.
Let's move on. Anyway, Mark Ewing is on next. Totally agree with all the above. Great show and great company. You're right, James. Those burgers were huge. Steve's cooking was ace. As always, another great episode.
Why do you use the voice like you licked a pig?
What Mark speaks like that?
No, he doesn't. He's totally Scottish.
I can't do a Scottish accent. Unfortunately, because now Mark has mentioned the burgers, I'm going to have to produce photo evidence of the burgers.
I think you should. Yeah, why not? Stick it up on Facebook if you remember.
No, I will. I'm going to write it down.
You have to write that down then. You can't just say, I'm going to write it down.
Well, no, I can. I can say that because no one saw that I didn't write it down until you mentioned it and I confirmed it. And now I've got to write it down because now I've just shot myself in the foot.
Yeah, you got to write it down and do it. Because I'm going to leave this in. And if you don't do it, it's going to be egg on your face.
No, it's all right. Hang on. I'm just going to get my lipstick and I'll put it on the mirror.
Whatever you write it down, it's fine. Ben Ashwin is also in this list. He says, just listening to the episode with my daughter, Chloe. Hello, Ben and Chloe.
Oh.
She was the one that got the signed coaster with her mum, Alison. Oh. Hello.
Hello.
She was made up to be mentioned on the podcast. Thanks. How many rivets were in the jar? Keep up the good work, gents. Oh, that's nice.
Mm.
Do you know what, actually, when we were recording that and we were editing it and decided putting it in or not, so I thought, if I'm going to ruin the surprise as the gift?
It's his Christmas present. She did say that.
Oh, so I have ruined it.
No. I'm just teasing.
Okay, right. Okay, good. Fine. Surprise!
Surprise!
That's great. Well, you're most welcome. You're most welcome indeed. How many rivets were in the jar? There were 399. And the winner, who hasn't given me any permission to mention his name, I'm afraid, got 396. So he was only 4 away, or three away.
So our last message was from, I can't pronounce that, Gilliam? Gilliam.
Quilliumai. How to pronounce? The L sound's not really there. So the L sounds like a Y.
Siri, what is French for William?
In French, William is Guillaume.
There you go.
Guillaume.
Guillaume. So next up was Guillaume.
What's his surname? Did you say his surname? Oh, sorry. I assume it's Gruchet. But it could be Grutchet. You know, like bucket and bouquet? Let's go for Gruchet because it's a nice sounding.
Gruchet. I want to go for Gruchet.
Gruchet.
Graham Gruchet wrote in. Graham Gruchet. What? How do you pronounce it again?
Guillaume.
Guillaume Crusade wrote in and said, great episode, guys. I also had issues at my hotel where the windows were horribly insufficient. There was so much wind entering my room that I wondered. There was so much wind entering my room that I wondered, laying in my bed, if the windows were wide open. Freaking freezing in the room. Shame on me. I didn't see the great tarp build. And he asked what hall it was in. It was in hall 3. But he then comes back with another thing saying what an experience that was. It was my first time attending Scale Model World, and actually my first ever time attending a scale model show. Wow, if you're going to choose one, that's the mind-blowing one to go to. Absolutely loved it. Can't wait to go to another show. Bring on 2024. Looking forward to listening to JMC at my bench this evening. Well, thank you very much for listening, and I'm glad you enjoyed the show. Welcome, David. David, if those that are listening don't know who he is 3D Gizmo, the man that knows everything about 3D printing. And we're going to pick his brains apart today to try and understand a little bit more as to why every time I print something, it doesn't work. No, it's for you guys. Sorry. We'll do that later after we recorded. Malcolm and I have been absolutely gagging to get you on here to have a chat about your amazing figures and bits and pieces. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you very much for having me on here, guys. Yeah, so my name's David. I started this really to begin with. It was kind of a lockdown thing, but I'd looked before, and I was just excited about something that, you can print something out in your home printer, but actually I can make this into a 3D model. Very graciously spoke to my wife, and she agreed to let me have a printer because they weren't cheap.
What year was that? When was that? Was that recently?
Yeah, that was 3 years ago now, that is. I said to her, "Oh, I can make all these things around the house for you, love. It'd be really good. Can I please have it?" Of course, I went and got one, and yes, I did make her some things. But for me, it was just really the concept of what it can do and everything else that went with it. But my brother-in-law, he is a modeler. He does a lot of World War II models. And he was like, "Oh, can you try printing this out for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, that's quite complicated."
Mm-hmm.
What was it?
It started off with some figures, walls, and barrels, and textured walls and bits and pieces. So I very quickly learned that how manufacturers sell you printers as you buy it, you can get a file, you download it, and you can hit print. There is no such thing. It just doesn't work like that. I had a bit of a background within Blender. I use Blender quite a lot, and I then started to work out how to get the printers to print the best they can. So since then, I've had multiple printers. I primarily use 7 printers now all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, they're running all the time. So I use resin and FDM printers. So I use the plastic one's the FDM, the resin one is the liquid.
Mm-hmm.
I quickly realized that the FDM printers had limitations. It was like, okay, so I can cut bits off and print those in resin and then do the bodies in FDM. My brother-in-law knows what I'm like, and it's kind of, if you say I can't do it, I'll go and do it. So one of them was, primarily we were printing in 1/16 scale.
Yeah.
And I said, "Can I do a dragon wagon?" He went, "Dave, it's too big. It's really too big. You're not going to be able to do it." So I went away, printed it and the trailer.
In resin?
This is FDM and resin. So to up that, I decided to print it again and made it RC controllable. So I've RC'd one as well. So I tend to do stuff like that quite sporadically. I really quickly realized what I was doing because my brother-in-law took me along to a few shows, and I was walking around the shows and I was really looking at it from a younger generation perspective because of my family I have as well. And I took them around and they were like, "That's boring. That's military." Got to sci-fi and they went nuts. Anime, sci-fi, really got their interest. Again, I came home and they were like, "Dad, can you print this? And can you do that?" I was like, "Yeah, all right. It's going to cost me a fortune, but I'll do it." But now they're into modeling. Both my children, just one's 14 and one's 22.
Wow.
Both my girls now are actively painting anime models. I was walking around a few of the shows and I met this gentleman from K Modeling Group. I loved his stuff because he did very big dioramas and bits and pieces. We was having a chat. He goes, "You've got to show some of your stuff." And as being a critic of my own self, you think my stuff isn't good enough to show. Like a lot of modelers sometimes feel like that. He invited me along to be part of his stand of the K modelling group. From there, I'll be honest with you, it's grown. So many people have asked for stuff. Can I do this? Can I do other little bits and pieces? I realised that there's also a lot of veterans as well within the modelling industry, and I didn't realise that. So I started my Facebook group. My Facebook group was more about people having fun, because I quickly found rivet counters. There's a lot of people who are very specific about what they do and their models, and I totally understand that. But I was looking at all the forums and Facebook groups, and some people were being quite harsh. You know, there's criticism, but also you're not going to know if that's a young person on that page at all, and that young person could take quite offence to it. And I've seen it happen a few times, and it's put them off modelling. So my Facebook group was all about put whatever you want on there, but when you suggest something or pass an idea on or pass the knowledge on from some of the fantastic modelers, it's about giving constructive feedback. And that's what my group's about. It's about helping everybody, showing them what's possible in 3D printing, showing them the stuff that I'm bringing along, also helping any younger children out there as well who want to get in and get involved.
Yep.
So from there, really, it just kind of spiraled since then. I was looking at the 1/16th market and seeing what modelers couldn't get hold of. Well, do you know what? I'll have a go at printing that. I'll see if I can mess around and print it. From there, I have probably 20 different vehicles in my collection now, 1/16th that I do, from German stuff to British stuff to US stuff. And I've gone from 10 figures to just over 140 1/16th figures now I do.
Oh, right.
But now I've also started producing stowage, which I've got feedback off people. I've just been doing it over the last 4 or 5 weeks. I've had a massive learning curve. I've gone round to model clubs, and they've asked me to come along and give talks on 3D printing.
Ooh.
And I do try to encourage people. You know, it's not exclusive to me. It's everybody can do it. I try to explain to people about printing. I personally feel it's all about what you do on the computer first before you get it onto the machine.
Right.
If you can have a very good file set up correctly, know which orientation you need to put it on a plate to be able to print, you're going to get the best results. And I think this is where I've come across people, and people say, oh, you're a modeler. And I go, I don't build models. I build my models, but I'm not a painter. A lot of people take the mick out of my stand and go, oh, you're Mr. 50 Shades of Grey, because I can do 50 Shades of Grey.
I'm sorry, David. I've seen that film, and you don't look the same.
All right, I'll let you have that one. I look at a lot of modelers and I see what they do, and everybody is phenomenally skilled at what they do. The paint works, the dioramas, all the details, phenomenal. I find that there's people who are like scratch builders, people who are kit builders. There's people who are just starting off. Now, my friend, he loves dioramas, but he wouldn't want to put 1,000 tracks together. So when I print my kit, normally my resin parts, like my resin tracks, all come together. It's one piece. My kits can comprise of 10 pieces to 22 pieces. You can put it together in an afternoon and you can start painting. And that's what he likes, because then he spends probably 15 weeks doing a diorama. So everybody's very different, if you know what I mean. Where my brother-in-law will sit there and finds it very therapeutic to put tracks together. Loves it.
Yeah, lots of people get lots of different things out of the hobby.
And that's the thing. So for me, my hobby is 3D printing, being able to get the best out of the machines and what it can produce, teaching people about it as well. But also I'm trying to go to manufacturers and companies as well now, trying to do a bit of consultation and explain to them how 3D printing can help businesses.
Yeah, but that's the thing that I really loved about your Facebook page, is I thought that was your business. Because I saw you first at Avon Model Show this summer.
Yes.
I didn't meet you, but I saw your stand and talked to your lovely colleagues. I thought that was your business, just because the amount of stuff that you had and the amount of range you had, everything was really well presented. And I didn't realize it was kind of presenting your hobby. But when I saw your Facebook page, I realized that it was this wasn't your full-time job. And I was amazed. And then that's what impressed me, I guess.
Thank you. I think it has become more of a business. now than before. This is something what I will always say is I will always try to do things for people that they can't get hold of, so it gives them enjoyment with their models. So yes, the range I have now out there, and I go to all the shows and display, everything is for sale. It kind of funds my hobby, which is to get better printers, to push the boundaries of what 3D printing can do. I say it's hobby, and people do laugh when you look at my display. It looks very business-like, but it is got, I think, to that point where people are now ordering stuff, wanting stuff, and I personally find that model makers spend an awful lot of money on the models, and then they seem to pay 2 or 3 times the amount for all the accessories. So that's why I'm showing that it is affordable.
And I've got a 3D printer, and that's the one thing. Initially, that's why I got it, was because obviously I enjoyed doing dioramas, and the thought of printing off a few bits and pieces that I can put into a diorama seemed like a really sensible and logical thing to do. Like you say, there's lots of files out there and bits and pieces, but getting the files to work is not always that easy. I've had some success, but not a great deal, really. You potentially end up with an investment that's sat in a corner gathering dust, which is a real shame, because the potential of a 3D printer is immense, really.
Oh, it is phenomenal. It is. But I do think that's where 3D printers are advertised. Like you said, oh, get a 3D printer, get a file, press print, off you go. You've got a model in a couple hours and you can paint it, but that isn't the case.
So what would you say to people who have bought a 3D printer in the past, have it sat there, gathering dust in their corner by the door there, want to perhaps use it more, get over that barrier of getting stuck with the model, or what would you say? How did you overcome that?
So I would say if you're getting a printer at home, I would always make sure you do your research on you. There's plenty of stuff on YouTube, but if you're going to start printing, start really simple. Print some cubes, print some stuff that doesn't have a lot of angles on it, and build yourself up. I did my wife really simple. I got some little brackets that fit on the back of the cupboard door. You can fit a pan lid in it. Really, something really simple, which kept my wife lovely and happy. You need to make sure you understand what the printer can do. So lots of research. There's lots of YouTube channels out there now dedicated to different types of printers. If you are going to go and get a printer on the other side, don't go and buy a ridiculously expensive one, because you need to find out that you're either going to enjoy it and have the time to do it, because it's not fast. My printers are now semi-commercial, but still most of my models take me anywhere between 60 and 100 hours to print. It's not quick. And I could probably spend 40 hours messing around with a file and cutting it up to get it to work. Starting off really simple, cubes, flat things, very simple things you can find that doesn't have a lot of sharp edges, and really build from there. Get used to doing stuff. And if you do anything to your printer, only ever make one change at a time.
Right.
Too many people go and tinker, and then they go, well, why didn't that work? And it is so true with printers that you just alter one thing and reprint the same thing and see if it's made a change.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
You don't need to spend a lot of money on printers to have a go at. They are coming down in price now drastically.
Yeah.
It can be very difficult.
So where is the fun in the hobby for you then? Where do you get the most juice out? Is it using Blender and building the 3D parts and the polygons and things like that? Or is it turning that into something?
I actually have a gentleman in Australia who is a full-time designer and designs a lot of my work for me. The problem is he is a designer. When he gives me a model, and I have the license for it and everything as well, but he'll give it to me as a whole model. That's not going to print. My fun is taking that 3D image, being able to physically cut it up into pieces. So I know how my printers work and how the best way to get stuff out of my printers. So I'll cut it, take it all apart, know how it's going to work, and then actually getting it printed and making it into a 3D model. To me, that's that little bit of excitement going, I've worked on this for 100 hours. Is this going to print? And then I go away and print it, and I have a model at the end of it, which is phenomenal. but I also get a really big enjoyment out of seeing what people do with my models.
Yeah.
So I have a vested interest of a lot of people, and I always say, when you paint something, please send me a picture, because I've seen people who have just glued it together, hand painted it, and it looks wonderful. But then I've seen people go to my models and like take doors off, heat it up a little rod and put a hole in it to make it look like a bullet hole. Fantastic airbrushing, and I think to myself, that person's got that skill set to turn that into this, and I get a real buzz out of it. And I think that's part of like seeing my daughter's face. I print her a model. She's into anime, and I print her something, and she's like, "Oh yeah, fantastic!" And then to see her sitting down painting, and probably every parent's going to say this, it's fantastic to see her not on a mobile phone, because they're normally glued to it. So to see her have an enjoyment out of that, and then her take it to a show and show it, but they come along to all the shows now. They come with us. Yeah. They thoroughly enjoy it. My wife is a phenomenal supporter. She helps me in this so much. We're out here doing stuff together, and it's become a family business together.
Yeah, it's a social thing, isn't it?
Yeah, you take away from COVID that everybody wasn't socializing hugely, and we certainly didn't go out like everybody else. But to find that there's a like-minded and group of people, you can go to a model show and you go around, you're talking to people, and everybody's kind of got the same interest or one way or another, and everybody joins in, and that is really, really nice to see that. And I think that's what I'm hoping for the future with the younger generation. It's definitely important.
Funny enough, I was talking about this only the other day, saying that you tend to think about model makers sat in a dark room, in the corner, not speaking to anybody and making their models and whatever. But it really isn't like that, or certainly doesn't need to be like that. Certainly since everybody's on social media and there's hangouts all over the place, and the 3D side of things, like I said, I've tried it, and when I've had results, they've been like, wow, this is amazing. The problem I find is the frustration. You print something, you go and check it like you're looking after your child, and oh yeah, no, it looks all right, looks all right, and then that moment you go, a couple of more hours to go, it'll be fine, and then come back and find a great big lump of resin. You're like, no.
Yeah. See, I get that quite a lot. A lot of my prints I run overnight, and I have to say, coming down in the mornings, you're like, do I open that door to see if anything's failed? I'm not sure. And my youngest, she's downstairs, getting all ready for school, and she shout up the stairs going, "Dad, your prints haven't failed."
That's nice.
It's like, thanks. That's what I mean. It literally has become a family thing. It's absolutely brilliant. One thing I will say, which I think is very important, if you have a normal FDM printer, which is the plastic one, what prints off a plastic spool, I'll always say safety. If you're using an FDM printer and you're going to run it overnight, I wouldn't recommend it. Purely fact is that the nozzle, the heat on that can be running at like 200 degrees. You've also got all the electronic components. If you have an FDM printer, have a fire alarm, have a fire extinguisher. Safety must come first, because you are using equipment which is hot. As a younger generation are coming through, I've seen people buy printers for their children, and there's like, oh, they burnt the finger on the end of it. It is a piece of equipment that is dangerous if not used properly.
And they don't come with shields, do they? There's FDM ones.
No.
And if you got pets and stuff like that running around, and you got moving printers running around, it's a recipe for disaster. That's a great point. Well, there you go. You heard it here first. Safety with JMC.
The lady behind me with the clipboard and the high vis is very pleased you mentioned that. We've literally ticked that box. So
you said about resin printers. Resin smells.
Yes.
It burns. It's horrible stuff.
Yes.
Is it getting better? Is it becoming less toxic? Is it becoming more domestically acceptable?
Manufacturers are bringing out stuff all the time. I have to say they are changing their recipe, as I would call it. So I use resin which needs to be washed in an IPA liquid. So it's like an alcohol liquid. It takes and strips off the excess resin. There is resin out there which you can use water and wash it off with water, but you've still got resin. And I'll always say to people, regardless if it says resin on the bottle, gloves, eye protection,
Yeah.
it's still a chemical. The machines are generally quite safe. You know, touch wood, I've never had any issues with one. They don't get hot like FDM printers, but you are dealing with a chemical-based substance.
Okay.
And if you get it on your hands, regardless of what it is, wash them. Eventually, manufacturers will come up with some concoction. Technology changes so quick.
And with that resin that you can use water, that doesn't mean you can run it under a tap.
No.
Because obviously you're poisoning the water source, so don't do that. I've mentioned that now. Yeah, that's fine. Health and safety, ladies. Another tick. Lovely.
Gloves, goggles.
Oh yeah, no, she heard that. Honestly, I can hear the the boxes are full. I did look at the water based, and I decided that I didn't want to do that because I just assumed that you're dealing with a chemical and you use a chemical to wash it, that you're going to get a better result than you are with water. Now, I'm told by people that have got it and use the water base that it's equally as good, but I just can't get over that hurdle in my head. Am I wrong to think that way?
No, because my brain's working exactly the same way as yours.
Oh, that's scary.
Well, it's certainly going to say no. I would have to say that when I first looked into it and messed around with resin, I did get a chemical-based IPA to wash, the resin from. I got the water washable resin as well. I tried both, and I personally found the results were better using a chemical wash. But the technology has changed a lot, and again, it could have got better. I have friends who have got that side of, the water washable one, and they say your prints are still a lot cleaner. But then again, it's one of those things. Printing, the factors can be many things. How hot your environment is, what's your process. Now, my process of resin printing, and I do say to people, like my figures that I can produce, most of my figures take about 17 hours to print, which is fine. I then go and wash them for 15, 30 minutes. So that's in a machine what does that for me. But then I dry them all, and then I actually let them sit for 24 hours before I even put them in a curing box. So the process is actually a long process.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Yeah.
I don't know about the blow drying. I'll have to ask the wife if I can borrow a hairdryer because I clearly don't have one.
No, don't do a hairdryer. Air compressor.
No. Hello. Right. Okay.
Yep. Air compressor.
I've got one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you just use an airbrush that has some air against it, because what that does, if you're using an IPA wash, it's alcohol based, so it helps evaporate.
Yeah. It makes sense.
But then also, if you leave it sit for 24 hours, not in the sun, in a darkish room away from UV light, it just allows it to naturally evaporate from into where everything is.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I'll have to give that a go.
That's a good tip for you. I've got the World War II soldier. He sat down, kind of a forlorn look on his face. Do you call that anything, or is it just got a number? Or
all my figures are numbered, but I just normally call him a general US guy.
Okay.
Sitting down, infantry, potentially.
Okay.
Again, it's learning all about the different types of figures and models and emblems. I've got so much to learn.
Sure. There's a little bit of cleanup to do in the little gaps there. There's little supports inside. You say you're not a modeler. If you're not modeling them yourself and you're cleaning up those supports, do you know where to put the supports so that you can't see them, or is it not something you know about or you do know about?
A lot of the stuff I do, I run test prints. My stuff, I like to be 100% before I put it out on show.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff here, you might have a little bit here missing. They're like, David, that is perfect. What are you doing? But yeah, so a lot of the guys that I will get feedback off them as well. But generally I will actually use reference photos, everything I do. So if there's a guy sitting down, I'll make sure that I'm trying to put the pegs at the bottom. But sometimes, so when I say pegs, this is the supports when you print in resin. You do have to use that to support it when it's printing. And sometimes you have no choice to put them in places that a modeler might see. I do my figures as 100% resin. So my figures aren't hollowed, they're solid.
Right.
You can file it back. So if you do get a few dimples here or there, you can file it back. But again, I'll put health and safety in this one for you so you can tick it. Resin is horrible stuff, even when you sand it.
Yeah.
So always wear a mask when you're just doing resin. It's not going to be good on your lungs. But it is a learning process when you peg something. Again, the first print I run, probably in the begin with, 50% of all my prints failed, because it was like, how do I get it to peg in the best possible way to actually support my figure? I generally then have a couple people I pass my stuff on to, ask for feedback and say, what do you think of it? Is it good? Is it a good pose? Is it going to be right? I sometimes I've been looking at, a friend of mine's asked me to do a lot of nice stowage for the tack on Jeep. So I've got a tack on Jeep to make sure that when I produce the stowage for my friend, because he's asked for some real weird stuff. So as a one-off for him, I said, okay, I'll do this for you.
Really weird.
It's not weird. So I'm doing not weird for me, but probably quite normal for everybody else. But he was asked, can you do a crate of potatoes?
Okay.
Can you do cans and all this? And I was like, yeah, I can do cans in a crate, and starting to produce some bits and pieces for that as well. Lots of referencing.
Have you got like a sack of potatoes behind you, have you?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, he does.
But I have to say, when I was looking at doing a lot of the weapons, I'm probably on the FBI watch list, because the amount of times I've searched weapons is unbelievable.
Just going back to the supports,
Yes.
removing those little bits, what's the best way to do that exactly?
The problem you have is that you can over-cure resin, and it can become quite brittle. So there is a fine time when somebody's producing something. My lovely wife, my assistant, she uses flush cutters, a bit like screw cutters, but they've just got a flush end. Depending on where they are, I normally clip off the base, go up to the top where the thinnest point is to the model, and actually snip flush to it. I've seen people use a heat gun and just slightly warm up the actual supports, and they break off really easily as well.
Breaking the supports off this, they came off very easily, really, really easily. Well, I've bought 3D prints before off eBay or Etsy or, all sorts of different places, and they come with all the supports on. I know that you could pay for someone to take all the supports off for you, but I'm guessing that it's best to ship them with the supports on.
For a lot of the stuff we do now, my wife has gone through a load of figures for the next show, and she's actually snipped pretty much all the supports off. I normally ship with supports on, purely for it's the breakages, it's the supports. Like we do a 1/16 little push bike, and I do the motorbike. I leave the supports on that for shipping. It's just because resin is fragile, and you don't know. And if you stick a sticker on it fragile, it could be getting kicked down the road. You just don't know. The reason why I came away from eBay is because, for me, like I said, I pride quality over everything. I really generally do. I've kind of come away from that because people are saying, "Oh, I've got a resin figure and it's still wet or it's leaking resin." It's because they've tried to hollow it out to save money, and so that's where I don't skimp. So sometimes I say, "Oh, my resin model's leaking." That's quite a common one. And that's because they've tried to hollow it out and haven't put drain holes in properly or not being washed out properly. That's why I've come away from that side of it. And this, like I said, is my hobby, which is self-funding by selling the stuff I do.
Yeah, and you've got to enjoy it too, haven't you?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
You have to enjoy it. As the people say, the best way to hate your hobby is turn it into a business.
That's why I don't go, like a lot of people have asked about me selling online, for my website and stuff like that as well. I enjoy selling at the shows. I generally do. So I always have a stock of stuff at shows that I can sell. And again, it's like you turn around and said, it's meeting people, enjoying yourself, laughing a joke and If you want to take the mick out of me, I have no problem with it, but expect it back. My wife's a hugger. She hugs everybody, so you always get a hug normally when you buy something. On my Facebook page, a lot of people say to me, "Oh, can you do this?" And I will do it.
Yeah.
But that's how I control what I do, because I can turn and say, right, I've got a 4-week lead time or a 3-week lead time, or I'm really, really busy. I do apologize, but you're going to have to wait a few weeks.
Sure.
I control it in that way, so it doesn't become, like you said, a full-on business where I don't want it to be difficult, because I do thoroughly enjoy what I do, and talking to people and showing people what's possible.
I've fallen out of love with my printer for a little bit, because I'm sitting listening to you thinking, oh, yeah, don't hollow anything out. Yeah, I tried that. And I recently did a load of little plinths, which I was super happy with.
Yeah.
It was a file that I downloaded, and, nothing too amazing. But I hollowed them out, and I didn't put a drain hole in. And I cured them and everything. And I'm very happy with them. All sat on my windowsill. And then one day I decided to tidy up the room and moved them, and realised there was resin everywhere. And it's like, I don't understand why it's done that. Never occurred to me to put a drain hole in. Yeah, it is a learning curve.
It is very much so. But I just hope it will also, as I said, the technology is growing, and it is going so fast. There's a young lad who comes and buys figures off us, and he turned around and said, I'm looking at him, he's really, really nice lad. And he says, do you know what? He goes, I've got a 3D printer. I've packed it up. I can't do what you can do. Why do I want to spend probably another 30, 40 quid when I can come and get a figure off you for the price you sell it for? He goes, I don't have to waste no time.
I was quite shocked when I got the printer. It wasn't cheap, but it was, it was in the lower range. And like any technology, as soon as you unboxed it, it's out of date, like computers and all the rest of it. But what amazed me is that I spent probably a week, every hour that I had spare, where I would normally be making models, looking on the internet for files and stuff, and that's interesting. And it took me down a completely different avenue that I'd ever experienced.
Yes.
And printed out some figures and some things that I would never have looked at.
Yeah.
For me, it was interesting in that respect, and I will use it, but I'm not going to use it sufficiently enough to warrant really keeping it, if I'm honest. And like you say, if you have somebody that will print something for you, yes, it costs money, of course it does, but realistically, it's not a great deal different. The cost of it doing yourself. However, that's not including the failures that you'll have, because they're the bits that cost.
Yes.
It's not actual printing. The printing is cheap for the final thing. That I think the last time I used it, I was trying to print a particular thing. I can't remember what it was now. I had several failures, did a few adjustments, bits and pieces, got it to print and went, brilliant. I'll print 5 of those. Fail, complete fail, over and over again. And I was like, I don't understand what I've done wrong.
Yeah.
Obviously, I multiplied those on the print plate, which is part of the reason why it went wrong, I guess. So I think, well, okay, fair enough. What I'll do is I'll do 5 of them, but I'll do 5 singularly, because I know the single one worked.
Yeah.
Our survey said.
Wow, I give up. And that's the bit that destroys me sometimes with it.
Especially if you don't know why it's done right as well.
Yeah, because like David said, at the end of the day, you can make very fine adjustments here and there. Going way back really the beginning, one of the things I realised was one of my feet on the printer wasn't quite settled enough.
Yeah.
I tested it, leveled it, made sure everything was okay. But then once it started printing, because there was that very, very minute little gap underneath that foot in the back, it started wiggling like that as it was printing, which then created an issue, which was creating failure. You start fiddling around with settings.
Yeah.
I don't go wrong. I love 3D printers, and looking at the technology there is now, I mean, my printer's 4 odd years old, I guess. I'm like, I could just, if I get that might solve the problem if I just upgrade it, which is pretty stupid way of thinking, if I'm honest. Because if you haven't learned the fundamentals, it doesn't matter how fancy your printer is.
No, I do have one particular, my printers are very expensive. That actually does have camera LiDAR detection on it. So if it fails, it will stop, which is wonderful. But again, fundamentally, it's still the same process. as a cheap printer that you can buy, you need to learn those fundamentals, because even if you buy an expensive one, if something goes wrong, you need to know how to take it apart. And I'd rather be taking a printer apart, which is maybe £150, than taking a really expensive one apart and my wife going,
"What are you doing?"
True to what you say, it is fundamentally learning the basics of 3D print. People say, will 3D printing replace model kits? It's not going to happen. You are going to get, possibly manufacturers might offer bits and pieces, spare parts as of a kit. There is a big difference in quality, but at the same time, 3D printing isn't there at the moment.
That argument or that conversation about whether it will take over or not, there will be technology in the future that's better than 3D printing.
Yeah, there is.
And you know, you could be looking at a Betamax and a VHS recorder effectively, couldn't you?
Yeah.
You know, the same sort of scenario is one you start with this, and then all of a sudden the next thing comes along and it skyrockets. So things will change, but I don't think fundamentally the manufacturers are they really too worried about their business going. It's certainly speaking to people like Airfix. When you suggest that, you know, could you have like a downloadable file that you can have that's in the kit that you can, like, the amount of money it would cost us to create that file, put it on there for you to do, and the vast majority of people that buy that kit are never going to use that QR code or print anything. So there isn't really any business sense.
From that perspective, you could be looking at prototyping. At the moment, some businesses get kits for spare parts. They get a whole kit, take a belt off a sprue. They've got kits stacked behind them. Most of the files are digitized now. You can potentially spend the time having somebody peg it and then literally being ready to be able to print it if you get an order come in for XYZ. But I do think modeling for the future, and I could be completely wrong here, is a next generation coming through and who are able to print, know how to print. Yeah, luckily my children are growing up with me 3D printing. A couple of their mates have 3D printers and they print already. The manufacturers need to incorporate something to gain the younger generation's knowledge to get them into model building. It's a topic conversation.
So essentially what we're trying to do is build things that we like.
Yeah.
You know, like sci-fi, anime, the German dragon wagons, because you like that thing and you want that thing on your shelf. So a 3D printer is going to help you do that. You know, the modeling hobby of putting things together and building things, whether it's tactile in your hands or if it's on a screen, isn't that the same thing?
This is what I was saying about the younger generation coming through. Is, say if you offered a kit, but as a promotional, again, like James used, a QR code or something like that, where once your kit is made, you could then put it on our Instagram page, and part of that, you would get a free QR code to download and print a figure to go with your model. So you've got advertisement, you've got publicity.
Yeah.
You know, publicity and advertising is one of the biggest factors in anything, of selling anything.
Yeah, and you also got a figure to drive the model, otherwise the model's going to sit there and not go anywhere.
Exactly. For the younger generation coming through, like Star Wars and bits and pieces like that, I think it's a big thing to come along, and I think we do need to engage the younger generation, but also the show for the older generation who have these wonderful talents of what they can all do, is to share that knowledge and share that, pass it on, so it's not a dying art. Where modeling has now become, you know, with the Japanese stuff, I think that's really important to start being able to diversify when you go to shows. And I think one thing I enjoyed about the K Modeling Group that I go to a lot of the shows with is that everything on the stand is slightly different. So you've got military, you've got planes, you've got sci-fi, you've got cars, you've got some military, you've got dioramas. So 90% of the public walking through, because at the end of the day, you're there to put a show on for the public. People potentially are going to engage with something on that stand.
So what bright shirt do you wear then?
Right. This is where it's gone slightly different. We were wearing these bright Hawaiian shirts, which is part of the group ethos.
Yes.
The group have all decided that they said, because people are now looking for me as 3D Gizmo, they said I need my own identity. I'm wearing a black t-shirt, which is not the same, I know. I do have my logos on it, but we have come up with a new emblem for 3D Gizmo,
right?
Which is nice and funny. It's bright.
Good.
But
Gotcha.
it's having our own identity when we go to shows. There was a slight confusion about, as you said, about my stand looking the way it did, and I had some stuff on there which wasn't for sale because it was my personal stuff that I'd built.
Yeah.
That is available to buy, and that's what we do now. So
Gotcha. Sorry, I have to move this cat out of the way. It just stuck its arse in my face. It needs to be punished for doing such things.
I was trying to keep a straight face.
I didn't.
Yeah, well, you did very well. It likes to walk all over my keyboard as well and press buttons and stuff and pause recording. So I'm going to remove the cat. Carl, I guess, is your hobby thing, you know.
Yes.
So you don't. To be fair to them, I guess you don't want to mix it up, and to be fair to you, you don't want to mix it up.
No.
You know, and obviously you all like going to model shows.
Yeah.
So
And we're all totally unhinged, and we get on like we're like one big family. Honestly, with some of the group chats, we've had a group chat today about Bugle Call coming up. It's good that we all get on really well.
With your current projects and stuff, obviously you like cars.
Yes. Yeah.
Your friends are obviously into Second World War.
Yeah.
Your daughters are into anime.
Yes. Yes.
This is a really silly question, but is there something out there that doesn't fit into either of those three categories that you'd really like to achieve?
I don't think so as such. I'm always up for doing something different. I try to show the varies of 3D printing, so something small to something big. Do you know the movie Paul?
Yeah.
Have you seen My Alien?
I believe I have. I think Malcolm showed me a picture of it, funny enough.
It's 5 foot tall. It was just to show that you can go for something that small to that big, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That was probably one I wanted to do because it was more like a large scale figure to be able to do. But
Yeah.
I think if anything, if I really could do anything, I think it would be a 3D printed working engine. Not necessarily as in working off fumes, but electronically. See all the pistons, the springs, the working gearbox. Yeah. I know there's some companies who do that, but there's something personally would be quite fascinating to be able to go, yeah, I've actually managed to do all the tolerances to get that to work, to be so precise.
Yeah, that would be a massive achievement.
I'd like to have more time to be able to do some more of my car models and get them finished. I normally start one and I end up doing stuff for my wife or, my children, or people have ordered stuff and I'm trying to get out the door. I'm trying to produce something new to send out there, what people can't get. And some of my projects do get shelved. Like, I'll be honest with you, I bought a spray booth, spray gun. I want to learn how to do it. I just need the time to practice. And this is the difference between, like I say, about 3D printing and a hobby to you guys doing your hobby.
So the other question I wanted to ask you as well was in relation to the machinery.
Okay.
So what was your first resin printer?
That was a Niggly one. I have any cubics as well. This is what I say to people. Now, my resin printers are slightly different because, yes, I use any cubics. Now, I'm just to let you know, I'm not endorsed by any of these people. This is stuff that I have paid for.
No, there are other companies out there.
Now, I have an any cubic, but I've actually got it butchered quite a bit. So I'm running a 12K screen. I have an IT background, but also, I like electronics. It's no longer standard.
Did you say 12K?
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, it was totally worth it 100%. I really needed it, and it made such a difference on what I got.
There you go. I'll leave that bit in.
On that same line then, if you're anything like model makers, they're always looking for that next best thing or that next exciting thing coming. There has been a few recently that have been released from different companies. Is there anything out there that's really grabbed your attention purely from your perspective?
Now, I can't afford this. This is straight up.
But it would improve your production greatly, just in case the wife is listening, correct?
Yeah, got a spare 30,000, yeah. Basically, you've got FDM printing, you've got resin printing, but you've also got SLS printing.
Yes.
Laser printing in powder, basically. That is huge. I've seen it up in close personal. I've been to the creme de la creme. That is, you're not using supports. There's no support marks. It's all multiple stacked things on that powder box. It's just the technology is at the moment is more commercial. And I think once that becomes the technology changes, again, like you were saying earlier about resin and FDM printing, I'm hoping that will drop, because that's a game changer when it comes to 3D printing.
That technique has been around for a very long time.
Yes.
Just hasn't been domesticated yet.
No, it's getting there. A company who do it very well, again, say not endorsed by anybody, is Formlabs. They've seemed taken quite a big lead in it. There's other companies, well-known companies out there as well. But again, that is a massive game changer for 3D printing, you know, but the technology is absolutely stunning.
Wow. All right. Well, watch this space. Eh?
I'm glad you said that. My wife will be listening to this podcast at some point, and I definitely need it.
Do you? Okay.
It'll be a game changer for me. I'm not sure how we're going to raise the money.
You might want to sell a kidney.
Hey, I've got 2 of them. Why not? I can't wait until that becomes mainstream, because I think also with that, I would have thought the powder would be a bit better controllable than the resin, pollutants and all the rest of it. And I'm looking forward to you getting one.
If you do, can I come round?
Just saying, I'm looking forward to you getting one.
Oh, me getting one. I went, you getting one. I was going to come round to your house.
What we'll do is we'll get one between us and we'll just share it.
Yeah, all right.
And then every time the wife complains, well, I'm borrowing it. It's his.
Yeah, exactly. It works.
I'm holding it for a mate. It's not mine.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, at the moment, like you said, it is phenomenal technology. The way they're now using it, it's fantastic. But again, it's the actual format and the footage of what it takes up in a space. It's a lot bigger. But as a production tool, yes, it is going to be phenomenal. I think when they can downscale the size to something more compact that can be, like you said, everyday use that you can actually use, then yeah, that will be interesting.
Would you lose the sprues, or would you keep them just for the sake of it?
That's a good question, but I would say yes. Because you think, imagine shaking. Yes, if you went through a whole model and did say 300 parts, you then shaking out in a little tub and going, I'll put that in a bag. It's not the same experience, is it?
If you remember way back when we were very young, that's what you got. You got a little bag with a load of plastic in it. And they weren't always attached to the sprues when you opened the bag. Maybe there's someone out there listening, and if someone wanted to get into this and learn the basics, what would you say right now was the machine of choice for a basic learning machine?
I recommend this to lots of people, and it is a very basic machine, but it's big enough. It's probably, you're looking at a Karate Ender 3 version 2. The reason why I say that is because it's not an expensive machine at all. You can get the machine, you can learn, have lots of frustrations with the machine as well, but you learn what levels of bed, how to level a bed, how to change a nozzle, how to tighten all your little guide wheels up. And you also then, when you start researching it, you can start printing parts for the machine as well. So you can print little supports for it. You can print different brackets. You can put an extra motor on there. But the reason why I say that as well, because it's such a common machine that if it goes wrong, you can go and buy a bag of nozzles for like $5.99 off Amazon or somewhere else you might want to go. It's a cheap machine to fix. You're not spending £400-500 on a printer, and then you break it and then find out that you got to spend another £150 fixing it. I actually gave my daughter, my eldest one, because she wanted to do 3D printing. There's an Ender 3. Go away and play with it. And by all means, ask me questions. If you want to go into 3D printing, you've got to remember it's not all about the printer. Also, you need to understand when you start getting the files that you need to understand how you use the software to get it into the actual printer. Make sure you get your licensing on your files if you're deciding that you want to make something and sell something. That's a really hot topic in 3D printing industry now, that how are we safeguarding our files? people are now digital watermarking the files, which you can do now. There's designers out there who are designing that work, spending hours and hours and hours on it. We need to remember these guys who are doing this work.
Digital stuff is so shareable.
Yes.
The industry also needs to look at that as well, then, don't they? As well as their printing side of things, looking at how they're going to protect the files.
That's going to be a big one.
We met your brother-in-law.
Possibly. Oh, yes. When we were at Telford, he was with me.
Yes.
That's my brother-in-law,
Gotcha.
James. Yeah.
Gotcha.
He's taken some of the models and painted them and shown me how, what they can be turned into. I've got other people like Glenn who helps me out as well, Simon as well. But the driving force has really been the people who have bought from me and asking for things that they can't get hold of. And like I said, I find a challenge and I will go away and try to get it done. And just seeing that person smile when you say, "Yeah, I've done it," is fantastic. That's what drives me.
So that's what you need to do, guys. You need to go out, you need to find David, and you say, "I bet you can't make me a..." Oh, it's like when you call Marty McFly a chicken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do that. So what biscuit is your biscuit of choice, David?
Mine is probably Oatie's with the chocolate
Okay,
coating
well, thank you
on
very
top.
much for joining us on this podcast. That was somebody called David, that we used to like. Never mind. Never mind. We'll have to just educate you. I think that's
You can educate me, there's no problem.
that'd be a tough day.
What is this with biscuits?
What do you mean? I don't understand.
What? What kind of question is that? What is it with biscuits?
You guys like your biscuits then, hobnobs?
Yeah,
It seems to be prominent on your channel.
Yeah.
it does appear to be. Yeah. Do you like biscuits as well, David? Yeah. Okay. So David's pointing to himself. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
This figure's taken many biscuit packets to acquire.
I can say this because this is over Zoom, but he is shaped like a biscuit. So obviously he likes his biscuits.
What type of biscuit? That's what I'm going to ask you now.
Wow! Do you know? I knew that was coming. I was just okay. To find out what the answer to this question is, what biscuit does his shape remind you of?
Yes, Malcolm.
A nice round hobnob.
I would have gone more like Bourbon, slender.
In fairness, I was thinking fig roll.
Full of shit.
But I'll allow that one. That's good.
Right. The other questions that I got.
Yes.
You were saying that you made things around the house. So you sold your wife on the idea of making things
Yep.
around the house. And you talked about pots and pans and the lid holder, which is great. What else?
So probably any advice to any gentleman or lady out there who wants to do something for their partner to entice them to do 3D printing, just really find out what they like. Because my wife likes dragons, so I did a dragon for her. She loved that. I've done little bump stops for doors. I have a big van that I've converted into a camper van and basically 3D printed a lot of parts for that. So I've done cubby holes, I've done light fixtures. I even printed some clips, which a branded clip of manufacturer that I managed to make very similar. Didn't have to spend 40 quid on clips.
Oh, there you go. Made your own clips. So it could be anything, I guess, couldn't it?
It could be. Made a nice heart-shaped present for my daughter to give to my wife. That went down really well.
Oh, that's nice. Was that difficult?
To be honest with you, that didn't take long at all.
Okay.
I even speeded up a bit.
Did you hollow print it?
Yeah, I did as well. Less info.
Oh, so romantic.
No, I have to say, she is my biggest supporter, and she's here 4 hours cleaning the models, picking the models, doing all the bags and tags and labels. She's one of them, spot on, absolutely brilliant.
What's your wife's name?
Name's Kirsty.
Well done, Kirsty.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you very much for doing all that hard work and putting up with David. Brilliant. Deserve a medal.
And thank you for allowing us to share the new machine. I really appreciate that.
We'll sort that out, James. We'll get that sorted. I'll get a bit delivered to yours and a bit delivered to mine, all right?
You briefly mentioned at the top of the show, you mentioned veterans.
Yes. The reason why I mentioned like for veterans as well is because it was more of a case of that on my Facebook group. We've got a couple of veterans I didn't know of.
Yeah.
And I'd done a couple of things for them and I'd sent them off to them. I always remember they came back to me and I had a lovely card off two of them, and it was just want to say thank you so much. I've been looking for this vehicle. I used this in the war or whatever it was, or I can't thank you enough there. And it brought back memories for me, and I really thoroughly enjoyed doing it. And that was a pleasure to think that I could give somebody not just the enjoyment of making the model, but bringing back memories to them which they lived and been through and done and what they wanted to do.
Well, that's the powerful side of modeling, isn't it? Is being able to recreate those memories and those good times, some of the bad times,
Of course.
but be able to recreate them reasonably accurately, that you can remember them, but then you can then look at the model from all different angles and you can kind of take ownership of that thing as well. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's great. Good answer. Like it. So why only 1/16 then?
I do 1/16 primarily because it's a size I enjoy doing.
Okay.
And I also had a lot of people going, I prefer to work on something bigger as my eyesight's not getting much better as I get older. Big market for it as well. But I also have started doing more 1/35 stuff as well, like stowage. I've started doing accessories, really trying to do high quality bits and pieces for the 1/35 side, because I generally turn around and say I get requests in all the time for lots and lots of bits and pieces. But like I say to people, one thing could take me a week to research. I might have to send it out to a designer who could come. It takes, the whole process can take a long time. So I always say to people, I generally write a big list down. Every time somebody asks me something at the show, could I do it? I make a list. And I always have that list. My wife has it as well. And if we get enough interest in that particular area, we will actively go and try to get that done if we can do it.
This is a numpty question to a point. Are you able to scale down what you've already got into 1/35th, or is that not as easy as it sounds?
People think once you've got it, you can upscale it or downscale it. But the problem is you tend to find is it can work both ways. So if you have a model which is very big and you then downscale it, all the walls become super thin. So a lot of things fail. So it's not as easy. I do currently do 5 sets of my figures in 1/35th now. So it is possible, but it doesn't always work. People think you can.
Just out of curiosity from that answer,
Yep.
if you have something small that you scale up, is that more of a problem or less of a problem?
Works both ways.
Okay.
The walls can get thicker as well.
Yeah, okay.
And sometimes if you get a model which is, say, for an example, a 1:1 scale model, if that wall is, say, 2 mil thick and you then downscale it to 1/35th, that wall's wafer thin. So you have to take that into consideration when you are upscaling or downscaling models. There is a limit you can push it. So if you had a 1/76 model trying to upscale it to 1/16th, I personally wouldn't do that.
But you could potentially go down a couple of scales and it would be easier.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Cool. Okay. If you weren't 3D printing, if this wasn't your little hobby, what interest would you be doing?
I think if I wasn't doing 3D printing and modeling, I would probably be looking at going down the lines of, really enjoying my RCs and messing around. Because I still incorporate, like I said, a couple of vehicles I've done, I've incorporated it. I did an RC Opel Blitz. So I did a static model, and then I did an RC Opel Blitz. And I think my childhood has come in and gone, yeah, I'm going to have a little play with that. I'm going to make it RC. How fast can I make it go?
yeah, can I break it?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that why you kind of go for the 1/16th as well? Because you can turn it into remote control?
No, I didn't actually do that personally to actually make RC. That's something I also found because I got a model and I was looking at it going, and it was the Dragon Wagon actually when I first started. It was like, can I make this into RC? What's available? So if I did a Dragon Wagon kit without the RC, could somebody then go and buy the RC vehicle and actually fit it to it? And there was. I'll be honest with you, technology's changed a lot since I was a kid when it comes to RC stuff.
Right.
He's like, Mine used to be all like petrol and nitro and stuff like that, you know.
Oh, crystals and stuff.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so I kind of like fallen slightly back into messing around with RC.
Oh, cool.
So it's kind of like, yeah, I do like to see if I can make some of them RC. I don't do all of them, primarily static, but if something takes my fancy, it's like childhood's coming back in again.
Going back to your childhood, you are basically a modeler from heart then. You're not the modeler who would stick stuff together. You're the modeler that would drive it around. And...
Yeah, I would say that I did have kits when I was younger. I did have model Airfix kits and planes like most children had. For me, it was just more of a case of probably my attention span. I won't, sitting down painting as a child. I would rather been outside running around with an RC car, driving it around. I know I sit down in front of a computer screen, but my brain needs to be active.
Yeah.
For me, I'm very much like, I just want it done. So for me, RC was a way of getting outside, running around in fields, an RC car, building jumps, and what you could do and break it and fix it.
Yeah, sweet jumps.
Yeah, yes.
I used to have a Super Sabre, and that was my break into the RC. It was the Tamiya Super Sabre.
Wow.
Yeah, I've still got it in the garage. I should hang it up actually by the wheels.
You'd be a legend. Put it on the back wall.
I'll be a legend. I'll put it on the back wall. Yeah, put it up there.
Oh, he is a legend. Honestly, he's a
I'm
total
something.
legend.
We need to know where we can find you, where listeners can find David. You've got an Instagram. What's your Instagram?
3D_Gizmo_.
Facebook group?
If you go in and search for 3D Gizmo, it now comes up. I'm on there. All I ask is answer questions when you join and that you are a real person. Otherwise, we don't allow on there. And the other one is that I do not sell any files because they are all licensed to me.
You get people asking, do you?
Yes, we get people all the time asking. The designer has designed them, I paid for them, and they're in my name.
So if people want to get contact with you, they could go onto your Instagram, send you a message. They can go to your Facebook group and send David a message there.
Yep.
Brilliant.
PM me.
What shows are you going to be at? Because that's like it's your fun part, isn't it? I know that you and I are going to meet this coming Sunday. Where else are you going to be?
So we have got in January, we're going to be going to Bolton. Also got the one at Tank Museum, Southwest Model Show, the Yeovil Model Show as well. Going to be doing both of those this year. We're trying to get into Milton Keynes. Looking forward to that one, if we can get into it. We're also doing Avon.
Excellent. That's where I met you guys first. So
yeah, love Avon. That's really nice, that one is. So yeah, we have possibly 12 booked in this year.
Lovely.
We've had invites further afield, which we have been looking at, and that was up in Edinburgh.
Scale Model Scotland?
I think it is, yes. Scale Model Scotland.
Yeah. It's supposed to be a very good show.
North Devon Model Show as well. First one this year, which was a very good success. Very good show. And they're doing it again next year. So we'll be there. It's nice that we're getting invites to different places.
Absolutely. You got Plymouth as well. They should be inviting you too.
Yeah, I actually had an email through today.
That's all my questions. What about you, James?
Everything that I wrote down has been answered. Super exciting. I will, next time I'm at a show, make time to come and see you and have a look at these figures. I'm very jealous of the figure that Malcolm's got there. It does look absolutely lovely.
So when I bought this, there's a whole stand of them, and they're not. Remind me, they're 22 or 25?
21 pounds.
21! There you go. It's even cheaper than I thought. 21 quid. And that's gorgeous. It's lovely. It's like the size of an apple.
Yeah.
They have not just World War II, all sorts of different things. So if you're at a show, go and see him. If you're at Facebook, go and see him. At Facebook. If you're on Facebook, go and see him. David, thank you very much for your time. I know it's late now.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate it.
No problem.
In the background there, if I really listen closely, can I hear the whirring and the buzzing and beeping of 3D printers?
Yeah, I've got all 5 going at the moment. I'm messing around with a Daimler Dingo.
Well, what you do in your spare time is up to you.
I thought you'd like that.
Yes. Aren't we all? David, thank you very much. And I wish you every single success. And
great interview. Thank you very much, David, for your time.
You're more than welcome.
Thanks, buddy. Cheers.
3D printing is here to stay. If it hasn't already, it is the way the hobby is going, where we, the modeler, can really set our imagination free.
It is this side of the hobby that can quite clearly open the doors to you with the models that we can make. Realizing the potential, we also realize it is really just another tool to add to your arsenal.
Next time, we'll just be making conversation about other
Did
subjects.
you just laugh at the word arse?
No.
You did?
No.
Your shoulders went up.
No, I didn't. I didn't. My shoulders went up because I was just going to think to myself, there's a funny comment then, I'm sure. Licking your pig and Arsenal, there's got to be. Anyway, next time, we'll just be making conversation about other subjects relating to this daft hobby of ours. Until then... You've been listening to Just Making Conversation with...
James Skiffins.
And Malcolm of the Childs.
Follow us on Facebook, where we post photos, updates, and other things.
Find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, iTunes, Google Podcast, YouTube, and all those other ones you use.
Let us know what you are just making and what your thoughts are on the conversation in this episode.
Thank you to the following supporters from paypal.me/podcast JMC or our Patreon from patreon.com/justmakingconversation.
Right, here we go. See how far I can get. Mark Ewing, Daniel Knoffel, Paul Gallagher, Chris McLean, Philippe Lafreniere, Johan Frenson, Mike Beep Sucker, Mike Shelley, Mark Harriet, Elliot Capretti, Adam Kieran, Trussell Lagoon, Craig Nichols, Elliot, Robert Lane, Dean, Nirvana Bill, The Model Kit, Callum from Michael Machines Podcast, Paint All the Minis, Peter, Brad Warren, Tim, Black Raffle, John, Julian, Chuck, Mark, Becca Wahi, Simon, Jersey Gent, Steve Lee, Costas, Mark, Ray, Neil Twice, Mike, Robert, Andrew, Jew, John, Mike, Jeff, Richard, Lynn, Gordon, and 7 others.
If you did show your support, leave your name so we can paint the roll of honour on the tail of our next episode.
Goodbye.
Ta-ra.
So I'm running a 12K screen. It's no longer standard.
Did you say 12K?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, you don't need it. Straight up, that is. You don't need a 12K screen.
Is that what you said to the wife?
You know she's going to be listening to this.
Yeah, I know. I'll edit it out, all right?
And my daughters want to listen to it, my 14-year-old. It's like,
Don't worry. I'll edit it completely out, okay? Don't worry.
yeah, it was totally worth it 100%. I really needed it, and it made such a difference on what I got.
There you go. I'll leave that bit in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.